Rain pounds against windows. Thunder rumbles. Crime scene tape flutters in the wind. In the world of forensic investigation, nature can be both destroyer and revealer. A week of relentless rain had turned Chicago into a waterlogged nightmare. Streets flooded, homes evacuated, lives disrupted. But on this particular Monday morning, the floodwaters would deliver something far more sinister than property damage. They would deliver the dead. Aerial shots of flooded neighborhoods, emergency vehicles, swollen creek. This is the story of how a single rainstorm, a burlap sack, and a rare cactus spine would expose a web of murder, lies, and corruption reaching into Chicago's wealthiest circles. This is a case where every piece of evidence, from soil samples to diamond charms, would speak for victims who could no longer speak for themselves. The morning of February 3rd, 2025, began like any other for Chicago Police Department's Major Crimes Unit. Chief Detective Marcus Brennan and his partner, Detective Ryan Foster, had spent the week responding to flood-related emergencies across the North Side. But the call that came through at 7:15 a.m. would change everything. North Creek, a usually placid waterway running through one of Chicago's poorest neighborhoods, had breached its banks during the night. The torrent of water carried debris, furniture, and refuse down from the hills above. Emergency crews working to clear the area made a grim discovery wedged between rocks near a condemned apartment building, a burlap sack containing human remains. Detective Brennan arrived on scene within 20 minutes. The victim was female, young, her body severely decomposed and bloated from water exposure. She had been wrapped carefully in industrial burlap and secured with rope. But the floodwaters had been violent enough to tear open the sack, revealing what someone had desperately tried to hide. The first question was obvious. Where had she come from? The creek flowed down from the forested hills north of the city, an area dotted with expensive estates and wilderness preserves. Someone had buried this woman in those hills, and the unprecedented rainfall had unearthed her. Forensic technician Rachel Davis coordinated the recovery operation. Her team documented every detail: the type of rope used, the weave of the burlap, the position of the body. But more importantly, they began collecting soil samples. The soil on the outside of the sack would indicate where she'd been buried. The soil on her clothing and in her hair would tell them where she'd been killed. Dr. Sarah Chen, the medical examiner, conducted her preliminary assessment at the scene. The victim's face was unrecognizable, destroyed by decomposition and water damage. Her fingerprints were too deteriorated for immediate identification. But Dr. Chen noted several crucial details: plastic zip tie marks on the wrists and ankles, a broken neck, and what appeared to be a blow to the head from a blunt object. The investigation had begun, but the victim remained nameless. Detective Foster coordinated with the Forensics Imaging Unit to reconstruct the woman's face using specialized software. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. In Dr. Chen's autopsy suite, the victim slowly began to reveal her secrets. Dental work suggested Eastern European origin, likely Ukrainian or Russian. Her age was estimated at 24 to 26 years old. The cause of death was definitively a broken cervical vertebra. Her neck had been snapped with considerable force. But it was the other findings that proved most intriguing. Dr. Chen discovered bite marks on the victim's chest and shoulder, marks made shortly before death. Saliva collected from these wounds was sent for DNA analysis. On the victim's wrists, the plastic zip ties had cut deep into the skin, evidence of a desperate struggle. The victim had even tried to chew through the restraints. Tooth marks were visible on the plastic. Using a cutting-edge forensic technique, Dr. Chen employed proton magnetic resonance spectroscopy to analyze decomposition products in the brain tissue. By measuring levels of trimethylammonium, butyrate, and isobutyrate, she could estimate time of death with 90% accuracy. The results indicated the victim had died 48 to 72 hours before discovery, sometime late Saturday night or early Sunday morning. The soil analysis provided the next breakthrough. Samples taken from the burial site in the hills matched soil found in the burlap sack. But more remarkably, embedded in the victim's clothing were several small, sharp objects that seemed out of place in an Illinois forest. cactus spines. Detective Foster brought the spines to the city's botanical expert, Dr. James Martinez. The identification was immediate and startling. These weren't common cacti. They were spines from Ferocactus, a rare Mexican species worth thousands of dollars, available only through specialized importers. In the entire Chicago metropolitan area, only a handful of collectors possess such specimens. Meanwhile, forensic imaging specialists worked around the clock to reconstruct the victim's face. By Tuesday afternoon, they had a workable image. Detective Brennan circulated the photo through missing persons databases in immigrant community networks. The response came within hours. The victim's name was Elena Rodriguez, a 25-year-old Ukrainian immigrant working in Chicago on an expired tourist visa. Her only known associate was Gregory Morrison, whose phone number was registered to several prepaid cell phones. When detectives visited Morrison's apartment, they found a devastated man who confirmed their worst fears. Elena had been trying to escape the escort service that had brought her to America. She'd been saving money, planning to disappear with Morrison and start a new life. On Saturday night, she'd called him at 2 a.m. from a party, frightened and wanting to leave. That was the last time Morrison heard from her. Morrison provided one crucial detail. Elena's escort service frequently sent her to parties hosted by Derek Caldwell, a real estate developer and prominent Chicago socialite. Detective Brennan knew the name well. Caldwell was connected, wealthy, and untouchable. Or so he thought. Obtaining a search warrant for Derek Caldwell's lakefront estate required careful maneuvering. Brennan and Foster needed probable cause, and the cactus spine provided exactly that. Cross-referencing rare plant imports with property records revealed that Caldwell had purchased a Ferocactus specimen 3 years earlier for his private conservatory. On Wednesday morning, armed with a warrant, a team of detectives and forensic specialists descended on Caldwell's mansion. The estate was impressive: sprawling gardens, waterfront access, and a temperature-controlled conservatory housing exotic plants from around the world. In the conservatory, they found what they were looking for: a magnificent Ferocactus matching the species of the spines found on Elena's body. Forensic botanists confirmed the match at the cellular level. The spine on Elena's clothing had come from this specific plant. But the conservatory yielded another surprise. In the soil around the cactus, technicians found drag marks in disturbed earth. Something heavy had been moved recently. More soil samples were collected and compared with those from the burial site. They matched perfectly. Detective Foster, meanwhile, was documenting the mansion's interior. In Caldwell's study, he photographed an impressive collection of art and decorative objects. One display shelf showed a conspicuous gap. Something was missing. When Foster showed the photograph to Caldwell's staff, a pattern of nervous denials emerged. No one would admit to knowing what had occupied that space. The DNA results from the bite marks on Elena's body came back with a hit. Ethan Cross, a 45-year-old venture capitalist with 2 prior sexual assault allegations that had been dropped under mysterious circumstances. Phone records placed Cross at Caldwell's estate on Saturday night. He was brought in for questioning. Under interrogation, Cross initially denied everything, but faced with irrefutable DNA evidence, he changed his story. Yes, he'd been with Elena at Caldwell's party. Yes, things had gotten rough, but she'd been alive when he left her on the roadside at 4 a.m. He was drunk. She wanted to walk. That was his story, and he stuck to it. Detectives didn't believe him, but they also couldn't prove he'd killed Elena. The timeline was wrong. Dr. Chen's analysis suggested Elena had died between 4 and 8 a.m. Sunday, but the location was nowhere near where Cross claimed to have left her. The investigation took a shocking turn when Dr. Chen made an unexpected discovery. While analyzing the plastic zip ties found on Elena's wrists, she detected traces of blood that didn't match the victim. The blood belonged to another woman, Lily Harper, a 23-year-old reported missing 4 days earlier. Lily Harper's disappearance had been treated as a low-priority case. She was known to travel frequently, and friends assumed she'd left town on short notice. But the blood on Elena's restraints suggested something far more sinister. Detective Brennan immediately ordered a comprehensive search of the forest area where Elena had been buried. Working in a grid pattern, forensic teams with ground-penetrating radar scanned the hillside. On Thursday afternoon, they found what they were dreading: A second grave, less than 50 yards from Elena's burial site. Lily Harper had been murdered in the same manner. Broken neck, zip-tie restraints, buried in a shallow grave. Dr. Chen's analysis revealed she'd been killed approximately 5 to 7 days earlier, Wednesday night of the previous week. Like Elena, Lily had been beaten before death. Unlike Elena, Lily's body showed additional trauma, scrapes and abrasions on her back, arms, and legs, with embedded sand and small rock fragments. The rock and sand samples were analyzed and compared against locations throughout the Chicago area. The match came back quickly. Tarabya Beach, a small, rocky stretch of Lake Michigan shoreline just 2 miles from Derek Caldwell's estate. A search of the beach area yielded more evidence. Lily's designer purse was found wedged between rocks, containing her identification, credit cards, and a membership card for Club Angel, an upscale nightclub in downtown Chicago. The purse showed signs of blood spatter, later confirmed to match Lily's DNA. Detective Foster visited Club Angel and interviewed staff. The head waiter remembered Lily clearly. She'd been a regular customer, always arriving with Derek Caldwell. The last time he'd seen her was Wednesday night, a week before her body was discovered. Caldwell and Lily had shared dinner and drinks, staying until closing time around 2 a.m. Lily had appeared intoxicated and unsteady when they left together. The pieces were falling into place, but prosecutors needed more than circumstantial evidence to charge someone like Derek Caldwell. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Among Lily Harper's personal effects recovered from the beach, forensic technicians found a wool coat with unusual characteristics. Chemical analysis of fibers revealed traces of rare plant material, specifically cells from an African violet variant that bloomed only in controlled greenhouse environments. Cross-referencing greenhouse plant inventories in the Chicago area, detectives discovered that Derek Caldwell's conservatory housed an extensive collection of rare African violets. A single petal from one of these plants was found in the coat pocket. Genetic analysis confirmed it came from Caldwell's greenhouse. But the most damning evidence came from Dr. Chen's thorough examination of Lily Harper's remains. During the autopsy, she discovered a small metal object lodged deep in the victim's throat, a charm from an expensive bracelet. The charm was platinum, studded with diamonds, and bore custom engraving. Detective Brennan recognized the craftsmanship immediately. He pulled photographs from the search of Caldwell's mansion and found what he was looking for: a photo of Caldwell wearing a distinctive platinum bracelet with multiple charms. One charm was conspicuously missing. Jewelry experts confirmed that the charm recovered from Lily's throat was an exact match for Caldwell's custom-designed bracelet. The metal composition, diamond cuts, and engraving style were identical. There was only one possible explanation. Lily had swallowed or choked on the charm during a violent struggle with Caldwell. Confronted with this evidence, Derek Caldwell's composure finally cracked. Through his attorney, he admitted to an accidental death during an altercation with Lily Harper. She had threatened to expose him. She'd overheard conversations about Elena's death and attempted to blackmail him. The confrontation turned physical, and in the struggle, Caldwell strangled her. The charm had broken off his bracelet during the attack, but Caldwell insisted he hadn't killed Elena Rodriguez. That, he claimed, was the work of his head of security, Shane Carter. Shane Carter was a 40-year-old former Army Ranger with specialized training in close protection and tactical operations. He'd served as Caldwell's personal security chief for 6 years, handling everything from threat assessment to problem solving. In his mind, Elena Rodriguez had been a problem that required solving. Under interrogation, Carter maintained his composure for hours. He was a professional, trained to resist questioning, but when presented with the physical evidence, the soil samples, the plant materials, the timeline of events, he began to calculate his options. Carter's attorney advised silence, but Carter saw the bigger picture. Caldwell was already talking, shifting blame, protecting himself. There was no loyalty left to protect. Carter's confession was methodical and chilling. On Saturday night, Elena Rodriguez had arrived at Caldwell's estate as part of a group of escorts hired for a private party. The evening proceeded normally until Elena wandered into areas of the house that were off-limits. She saw financial documents, overheard conversations about tax evasion, and money laundering. When she tried to leave early, Carter intervened. What happened next was, in Carter's words, an operational necessity. He drove Elena to a secluded area of the estate's forest preserve. When she tried to run, he restrained her with zip ties he kept in his vehicle. He intended only to frighten her, to ensure her silence. But Elena fought back, screaming, threatening to go to police. Carter, trained in hand-to-hand combat and quick-kill techniques, made a split-second decision. He broke her neck with a single, practiced motion. Then, treating the situation like any other security operation, he methodically covered his tracks. He buried Elena in a pre-identified location, wrapped in materials that couldn't be traced. He cleaned the scene, disposed of evidence, and returned to the estate as if nothing had happened. Derek Caldwell, according to Carter, knew nothing about Elena's death until the following day. But when Lily Harper disappeared on Wednesday, killed by Caldwell in a moment of panic, Carter saw an opportunity. He buried Lily near Elena, making it appear as though a single killer was responsible for both murders. Carter's only mistake was one he couldn't have predicted: the unprecedented rainfall that unearthed the graves he'd so carefully prepared. The trials of Derek Caldwell and Shane Carter dominated Chicago headlines for months. Caldwell was convicted of second-degree murder in Lily Harper's death, along with conspiracy and obstruction of justice charges. He received a sentence of 30 years to life. Shane Carter faced 2 counts of first-degree murder. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ethan Cross, the venture capitalist whose DNA had been found on Elena's body, pleaded guilty to sexual assault and received 8 years. His cooperation in the investigation likely spared him more serious charges. Elena Rodriguez's body was returned to her family in Kiev, Ukraine. They held a funeral service attended by more than 200 people: friends, family members, and members of Chicago's Ukrainian community who wanted to honor a young woman who dreamed of a better life in America. Lily Harper had no family. She was laid to rest in a Chicago cemetery with Detective Marcus Brennan and Detective Ryan Foster among the mourners. The detectives had promised her justice, and they delivered. The case of Elena Rodriguez and Lily Harper demonstrates the fundamental principle of forensic science. Every contact leaves a trace: a cactus spine no larger than a pinhead, a diamond charm in a dead woman's throat, soil samples that told a story of burial and betrayal, DNA and saliva that identified an attacker, metallic particles embedded in a skull that pointed to a specific weapon. Montage of evidence photos: the cactus, the bracelet, soil samples, the zip ties. But beyond the science, this case reveals something darker about human nature. Derek Caldwell and Shane Carter believed their wealth, their connections, and their careful planning made them untouchable. They believed that 2 immigrant women, vulnerable, marginalized, invisible to much of society, could simply vanish without consequence. Photos of Elena and Lily when they were alive, smiling. They were wrong, because in the end, the dead always speak. Through trace evidence and forensic analysis, through dedicated investigators who refuse to give up, through the inexorable march of justice, the dead always have their say. Detective Brennan standing in the rain, looking at the creek where Elena was found. The rain that exposed Elena Rodriguez's grave washed away the illusion that perfect crimes exist. In forensic science, as in nature, nothing stays buried forever. The truth, like water, will always find a way to the surface. Final shot: Chicago skyline at sunset, storm clouds clearing. For Detective Marcus Brennan and Detective Ryan Foster, this case was a reminder of why they became investigators: to give voice to the voiceless, to seek justice for those who can no longer seek it for themselves. Elena and Lily may be gone, but their stories, told through evidence, science, and unwavering determination, will never be forgotten.